luxury training, and corporate partnerships. Okay, so that completes my verbose introductory lineup. So Smita, since I ended up with you, let's kick this off with you. Okay.
Sure.
So how has COVID-19 impacted the luxury industry in totality? Because what do you think will change in the luxury market post the pandemic?
A very interesting question indeed, Sandeep. And I think a lot has changed when it comes to the luxury industry.
Right.
If you look at now, major luxury fashion houses and luxury conglomerates are now shifting, their they're literally shifting to help the pandemic, support the pandemic. A lot of these luxury conglomerates have now started producing hand sanitizers and
Right.
face masks and things like that, which is I think very interesting. And obviously it goes without saying, large luxury conglomerates like LVMH, Richemont, Kering, etc. have donated huge amounts of money to the relief for COVID victims. In a way, I think the pandemic has also allowed these brands to pause and reflect and understand a new way forward, if I may call it that.
Right.
A lot of innovations are happening already. You can see in data, and the way we are trying to personalize services towards consumers. So even with the luxury sector, I think largely data will help. Technology will help a lot to
Right.
continue with personalized experiences, because I mean, which is quite interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that evolves,
Change
because
comes. Yeah.
when it comes to luxury, everything is about emotions, everything
Right.
is about craftsmanship, everything
Right.
is about the spirit of luxury is about pure emotion. So how do
Yeah.
you do that with data and technology and stuff like
Right.
that? So it
Right.
could
Right.
be a challenge, but I think
Right.
everybody's embracing it.
Right. Right.
So I think
Awesome.
that's my take on it. But
Okay, Akshay, I'm gonna direct next to you. What about the styling industry? How has it affected your work on a general scheme of things?
Well, it came to a screeching halt. So it's been really interesting to see how that happened. And obviously, the pandemic was something that nobody ever thought that it was going to really spread out from where it started. And I think that's why it got so many people caught off guard.
Mhm.
The only thing that I would say in terms of styling is that, it's such a hands-on, it's such a like intimate process, so to speak.
Right.
And the
Right.
process is such a public process too. Like you have to go and you have to put clothes, you have to make them, you have to cater to that, you have to alter it, you have to fit it. So the
Right.
process itself is so much human interaction that unfortunately you can't take that risk. So it's been really interesting to see how like things stopped, and work obviously had stopped, but fashion is so adaptive, right? Like
Right. Right.
immediately people just jump right on and find
Right.
new ways of innovating, find new ways of telling the story. Fashion has seen decades and centuries of pandemics and dilemmas that they've faced.
Right. And it's pulled through. Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. And Rizwan, how has this impacted your work as a luxury influencer, especially in terms with your co-branded projects?
See, definitely outdoor engagements have taken a hit, which is pretty obvious because there are restrictions on, traveling across cities or
Right.
attending events, etc. And, cities have been locked down. Entire world is under a lockdown. But like Smita mentioned, a lot of brands have adapted digital in a way that a lot of launches are now happening digitally. And talking about my own experience in the last 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
I have been a part of a few digital launches which were pretty exciting. So, to name a few, BMW launched a couple of cars during the lockdown. So, obviously, the sales will start once the dealerships start opening. But
Right.
they have come up with a contactless experience where you can browse through their websites, and you can get that virtual reality experience. Talking about luxury again, Watches and Wonders, which is probably one of the biggest trade shows for watches.
Mm-hmm.
That took place in April, and
Where did that
we were
take
a
place
part of.
in?
So it usually happens in Geneva,
Okay.
but this time, since it was digital, a lot of interactions happened through Zoom calls, etc. And luckily, we got a chance to be a part of these digital interactions with the CEO of the top watch brands. So I think the positive side has been that, there have been more interactions than before.
Nice.
But definitely the physical touch is missing. But again, this is a time of disruption. We have never seen something like this before, and social media plus digital is at its peak. So I think it's a great time for brands to sort of start doing digital for the next few months or few years, I would say.
I'm going to delve on to that sooner or later.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. So in terms of, okay, Rasika, your initial thoughts on how it's impacted the luxury design industry in specific?
Well, definitely, as we all know, the pandemic has been a leveler of many, in many ways, and
Right.
it has affected most industries, not just luxury, but even otherwise. We can't just say luxury is affected in retail; it's affected in hospitality, in travel, tourism, in everything, pretty much.
Right.
Specifically, to speak about luxury retail, it has been impacted. I think, in a case in point also, I would say not.
She's stuck?
Okay. So am I audible?
No, you were stuck for a slight second there.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, I was saying that, not just the pandemic, but even the protests that happened in New York on, Fifth Avenue, we saw a lot of luxury retail stores boarded up. And what does that say to, everyone in luxury and the approach to the whole aspect of how consumers perceive luxury today?
Right.
So yeah, it remains to be seen at many levels how that everybody will fare through. But I think it is a lot. It's a time to invest in building goodwill with clients, getting more personal, and also knowing what is the value proposition really that one is actually all about and the core values to really pivot from. I think that's what this time is offering us as a perspective to keep track of.
Okay. So in terms of, I'm going to delve into the wedding aspect of thing. And obviously my first question will go to the head of WeddingSutra. So Parthip, be it recession or demonetization, the wedding industry remained largely unaffected, right? But the pandemic comes in and it's unleashed a set of whole new challenges for the wedding season, dramatically that too, right? How has COVID-19 affected the wedding industry as a whole so far, according to you? You're on mute. Right.
Sandeep, as you know, a wedding is a very emotional experience.
Right.
And what's going to happen right now? Everyone, I must say, is just clueless because a wedding, and for the venue and the planner, it's all about how are you going to strike a balance between the connections and safety norms. Whether you have 25 people or whether you're going to have 250 guests, there are going to be safety norms there. And how can you make it a memorable experience for them and yet ensure that the guests feel comfortable there? It's everyone's responsibility. The host, the venue, and the planner. So, while there have been a lot of guidelines in international destinations, especially those who are hugely dependent on the tourism sector, on how it will work, how things will work. Here, different states are just sending out guidelines, and all that people know right now is that perhaps you can have, a gathering of 50 people, but you have seen really when it comes to how the big fat wedding became bigger and grander. And in a scenario like this, how are you going to manage timings, the food service, all the elements out there? And I think each day post-lockdown is going to be a learning experience. And for this entire wedding industry, which is not just planners, the decorators, the entertainment, they just have to take each day as it comes and figure out how to make it an intimate. What will be an intimate experience? How do you give make an exquisite experience?
Nice. So it's about the intimacy primarily. So
the human connections and safety.
Okay. So Kresha, this is for you. Okay, weddings have been postponed indefinitely, as you know, as many of your clients, I'm sure, have told you as well. And even those that are happening now have been scheduled in a more minimalistic manner, right? Indian weddings are largely considered to be a big industry for fashion designers. How has that impacted your business in terms of like sales and future planning and all that stuff right now?
So, a large part of what we do and the pieces we create are bridal. We have our bridal and our wedding clientele.
Right,
So it's really safe to say that we are wedding dependent
right,
designers, as
right.
is a huge chunk of the team that, works within the bridal department. And the situation right now is a little here and there, if and when any weddings are going to happen in the coming year, and that is definitely stressful because a huge chunk of the team depends on that to happen.
Correct.
um, in the last few weeks, what we've noticed is we have three kinds of conversations that are happening with our clients right now.
Right,
One is we have the bride who has decided to have her intimate wedding at home,
right.
decided to wear, beautiful piece that belonged to her mother, belonged to her grandmother, and continue that wedding. The second
Mhm.
kind of conversation we're having is a similar bride who would like to have her wedding right now in a very intimate fashion, but can't
Right,
wait to have her, one big grand reception,
right. Yeah.
when she can. And the third kind of bride, which I was very surprised to see, but it's been really interesting, is the bride who initially had a very minimal budget.
Okay.
She had 5 functions, she had 5 different outfits, she had 300 people attending her wedding, catering, logistics, decor, and now she's having her wedding in her living room. Her masi is coming and making her mandap. Um, she has a huge chunk of that budget uh,
Right,
just for that. Now her 300 guests have become 1,500 virtual guests,
right.
and she wants the grandest outfit she can get,
Right,
because
right.
she's like, otherwise on a mandap or on a Sangeet stage, a person can see me, but they can't really see me. But now, when they're looking at me through their iPad or their laptop or their phone, the
Right.
whole attention is on, my husband and I and that
Yeah, 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 yeah,
situation. So
yeah,
I want the most extravagant outfit with the most extravagant details, love story details.
yeah,
So, it's been really interesting. And
yeah.
like Parthip mentioned, weddings are an integral part of us and our culture.
Right.
And for some people, it's one of the biggest and most important occasion, in people's lives, and they wait a
Yeah,
lifetime to have their wedding.
right.
So I definitely think it is an industry that had bounced back, and it is an industry that has sustained through everything, through the recession, through demonetization.
Mm.
Um, and whether
So
it's
yeah,
someone who's having like a big fat wedding, all functions, or whether it's, a new generation who wants to have an intimate wedding, maybe a destination wedding, take a bunch of their friends and then come back and have a massive function. I do see that normalizing as soon as
okay,
the
awesome.
situation's over.
Parthip, and speaking of cancellations and delays, right? Are most of the weddings postponed, or are couples still getting married? What do weddings look like for over the next 12 to 24 months? Again, mute.
There are currently three kinds of brides. Those whose weddings were scheduled between April and December, and these could have been anywhere between 500 to 1,500. Yes,
Right,
some of them had decided to have that 50 bucks, wedding at home. Even doing it in the neighborhood, by the way, is not easy. We do know of planners who are saying that even the buildings are not permitting. So even if they want to do it in the neighborhood, it may not be easy. And there are those who have, trimmed down the guest list from, say, 800 to 200 for a November, December. This is what they had planned.
right.
But now they are thinking, hey, you know what? We can't even be sure that it's easy to pull off a 300 pax wedding in November or December. We
Right,
don't know
October.
what's going to change. So instead of planning and
Right.
replanning the wedding, they may just decide to have a small affair, which is also not practical always. Given
Yeah,
all
right.
the the situation, your friends can't fly, and you've been seeing the posts on social media about traveling. So your best friend may not even be very comfortable traveling in from Delhi. So, and then there are those who said, you know what, instead of planning and replanning the wedding, we may just decide to do it after the vaccine is out. So of course, this is something which every family may not be comfortable with, especially if they've already had an engagement of 6 months to 1 year. So I won't be surprised if between July and November, many families may just say, okay, this is an auspicious date. Instead of waiting further, we might have a small function, and then we will plan to the grand post-wedding party whenever.
Nice. Okay, so okay, Smita, the next one is directed to you. I'm going to talk a little more about shopping trends because Kresha had kind of dealt on that a little earlier. So people would like to look their best, right, on their big day, whether it's a small wedding or a virtual wedding. But considering many of the top conglomerates are kind of incorporating a price increase for their core products, I'm talking about the luxury conglomerates, obviously. Do homegrown luxury brands need to consider lowering their price points during this COVID-19 economy just because of the reduced spending power?
No, I don't think that simply reducing price is going to attract the consumer that they were, wanting to attract to begin with. In fact, the recent trends have shown that post-pandemic people are going to be more conscientious and more, they're going to think twice before investing. I mean, come on, like think of it like what would you do, when you finally can shop? Would you want to save 2,000-3,000 rupees just for the heck of it, or would you rather spend maybe a little extra knowing that that brand is actually doing something for the environment, or that brand is actually following all the safety measures? So it's about that, that ick factor that you will have as a luxury consumer if you think about saving 2,000-3,000 of rupees. You don't want to have that ick factor which is going to continue haunting you for the rest of the time that you after buying the product just by saving a mere few thousands. You'd rather want to invest, in fact, money with a in a brand which is doing everything for the environment, following all the safety measures, it has everything in place, logistics wise, everything. So I think that when it comes to a luxury consumer, even with homegrown brands, homegrown brands actually focus a lot on loyal consumers. So the consumer is not going to shift. In fact, I think at this time, the brands are going to reach out to consumers very, very personally, and it's going to be more of like, how you wouldn't want to change your doctor during, have a fever. Because you trust the doctor. You wouldn't want to change your the brand that you buy your wedding outfits from or your jewelry from. I mean, a jeweler is like a doctor. Every family has their own family jeweler. So it's not the time for switchers. It's a time to show loyalty, I feel. And that's what brands are going to, they're going to focus on that. They're going to have strategies in place to keep them in the brand, to keep these loyal consumers in the brand. And now I think more than ever is a time for brand advocacy. I mean, I'm just giving an example with Starbucks, but I think Starbucks is doing a brilliant job with brand advocacy. If you see them out there on LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere, I mean, they're just talking about how they're taking care of their employees. And that's what's making consumers want to go and get a Starbucks,
Part of this, right? Nice. Okay. I mean, so Kresha, talking about again the last of the wedding seasons, the festive season is going to come hopefully by August or September, right? So do you think people will likely start to indulge themselves in luxury purchases, and what do you think customers would come to expect from you from an in-store experience as well?
In terms of luxury pieces, I definitely think investment pieces is what people would look at. Slow fashion investment pieces. People will be much more conscious about what they're buying. Exactly how Smita said, get rid of frivolous purchases, think twice about whether they really need what they're buying. And, when we're talking about an in-store experience, it's always been really important to me and my team and us as a brand to have a narrative and to put our consumer through an entire story from the second they walk out of the door to when they enter the store. The fragrance you get in different parts of the store has all been created to evoke a certain feeling or bring out
Right.
an emotion.
Right.
Even the way your coffee is served, even the way you have a menu to choose what you want. And, we have our bridal suite on the first floor, which is made like a living room. So you have a beautiful sitting area, and then you have these curtains, these reveal curtains. So we only have one bride or one bride family in the bridal suite at one point of time. So that entire place becomes their personal suite. So, I mean, of course, that's something that we would be continuing because that really makes the brand and the experience what it is. But now we would have to really focus on having one client in the store at all times. So whether it's the bottom floor, which is the pret area, or the bridal suite. And of course, apart from that, ensuring temperature checks 3 times a day, making sure that we only have 2 employees in the store. They have to have their masks, gloves, face shields, regular washing of hands before and after every appointment, sanitizing of surfaces before every appointment. But yes,
so you're doing the works.
Yeah, of course. And we really, our product is touch and feel. So this is a huge challenge between, digitizing as well. But we want to give the same experience, of course.
Right. So Smita, Rasika, this is for you now. Smita had just talking about the whole sustainability angle, right? So before I get to that, I want to understand a little more about consumer behavior. So what are your thoughts on the ongoing debate between the two kinds of buyers? You're talking about like a conscious buyer, and you're talking about a revenge buyer post the pandemic. So your thoughts on that?
Smita, you want to go first?
This will be for you, Rasika, because
okay. Okay, so definitely I would hope to have the consumer veer towards more conscious fashion and mindful fashion than revenge buying. Personally, if you ask me, we have the store's overall aesthetic in buying and merchandising has been minimalist, where it's also very lean merchandising. It's not about having 200 units lying on the store floor, and so the merchandising has been so lean that even our dead stock over the years has been legendarily low, to force us to go into distressed sales and things like that. But coming back to your point on how will the consumer psyche work and which way will it swing? Like I said, I hope it swings for the better than for the worse. But, people may just have more money in hand to spend in case if they are trimming on budgets related to the whole shebang of a wedding, shusha, flying down to a destination wedding and putting up 200 guests and, all those budgets are what will get probably used more towards personal sort of consumption, and whether it's jewelry or it's wedding lehengas or, clothes that the bride or the groom and the families are wearing. So yes, in that sense, the luxury wedding market may not see a very big hit, because though the market will shrink, but, it's not going to disappear. I mean, Indians love the weddings and the whole celebration mode of festivals and everything. So I won't call it revenge buying, but I think it will be more need-based buying, possibly.
What about the sustainability angle? Do you think it's in today's like luxury business planning, how do brands, like existing brands specifically, incorporate the same, and how do they avoid like the greenwashing trap, as they say, right?
See, it's a wide topic by itself, honestly, to talk on. And if I were to say how important is sustainability and so greenwashing is something I myself, as a consumer, I speak, and on behalf of my consumer, I would want to look through that. Like Smita said earlier, ethics will be as important as aesthetic, in consumers will probably prioritize brands that are purposeful when they're buying. So, if someone who has invested time wisely in building goodwill and saying what the brand stands for in times like these and not going for a hard sell to the clients, I think those are the brands which will sustainably thrive in the business sense of marketing and sales, if I were to speak of.
Okay.
So yes, sustainability also, I would kind of go into it in terms of are the wages being paid? Is the business itself sustainable? How is one sourcing? Is that oriented towards a sustainable and mindful business practice?
Right.
How green is the business? Forget greenwashing, but all those things come into play. So it's a very, to answer you in 2 or 5 minutes will be very difficult on this topic.
Just to get your insights. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
so
but
Parthip,
consumers are going to pivot more towards brands which are having a thought to sustainability and are not greenwashing.
Okay. Parthip, what is your take on the whole sustainable wedding system that's been going on right now? People are attempting that. So what do you think about that?
There are a couple of things. More than anything else, it has just been mindful expenditure.
Right.
So these are all, as we know, difficult times. And all weddings have always been a celebration where, you just come there, you elevate your mood, you spend time with people. Now the situation is very different from city to city. In a city where it has not seen too many COVID cases, you may have all the HNIs come together. And you know how the wedding has always been about great jugaad, right? You find a way, but it will not work right now, given what we have been seeing on social media. One person breaks the rule and it will be all over.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how much in times like this, it will be about what is mindful. And Kresha was talking about meaningful. So the bride may take what is very special to her, or, it's something which represents her, her family, her traditions, and that will be the brief to the wedding designer. It'll be about stuff which is not wasteful expenditure. It will probably be an association with charity, maybe. These are all things which will play a role. But I would like to add one thing here, and I think you will probably come to that question soon. And this is the question which everyone is asking me every day: will virtual weddings work? And my answer is no.
Yes,
there would be some enthusiasm in month one, but there are two kinds of people: those who like attending weddings and those who don't like attending weddings. If you like attending weddings, you will make it there, and I'm sure in 1 month's time we'll all be able to travel, especially if it's our best friend's wedding. But if you don't enjoy attending weddings, you're not going to go, definitely not going to go virtually, because a wedding is not like a webinar where information is exchanged. It's all about emotions, and those cannot be seen at a virtual wedding. And you will not have people enjoying it unless it's your best friend or your niece's wedding or cousin's wedding, and you're not able to travel to attend.
Right. Yeah. I read your editor's notes. I think that was pretty much sums up what you were talking about. So Smita, in terms of e-commerce, right? Do you think consumers continue to confine themselves to their phones and laptops, or instead of visiting an actual retail store? Because luxury involves, as Kresha also said, it involves an experience, right? But physical retail spaces are facing a lot of uncertainties right now. What will that mean for the future of luxury e-commerce?
See, again, when you talk about luxury, you have to literally, segregate and talk. So when you talk about I think right now is
Let's talk about fashion.
I mean, right now is a time for all girls and boys, depending on what you like, to browse. You're definitely going to want to browse on your iPad or your mobile phone or your laptop or whatever. You're browsing. You're following the brand that you like. You may not go all the way for all categories of products, even in fashion, because Sandeep, even in fashion, you have the FMLG, the fast moving luxury goods categories, and you have the certain categories which you want to wait, you want to, as Kresha said, you want to touch, you want to feel, you want to smell, you want to experience, but housing doesn't stop.
Right.
So having said that, e-commerce is definitely going to be a very, very important, I think, factor for brands to keep in mind. E-commerce should not be seen as a platform for brands to sell per se, but it should be seen as a platform for brands to communicate, to exchange their thoughts and ideas, to get closer to consumers, to storytelling. I think brand storytelling is the key currently, and it will give them long-term results. If I'm thinking that, okay, August I'm going to open the stores, I'm going to have 1,000 consumers, customers walk in and buy 1,000 pieces, that's not going to happen. It's gonna require me to consistently talk about my ethics, my code of conduct, what I'm doing, my CA, whatever, like as a brand, how I'm how, what's my process, how transparent I am, even with fashion, like behind the scenes, what am I doing for the karigars, and how am I safeguarding them, and how am I taking care of that? If they're coming to work, how am I making sure that they can come to work and feel safe? If you talk particularly about the luxury wedding fashion industry, because again, when I talk I'm talking about the whole, whether it's automotives and wines and spirits and jewelry and this and that. So it depends from sector to sector, but e-commerce is going to be extremely vital. It's going to be extremely it should be extremely experiential. There should be no reason why brands should, and brands are already doing that. They already focusing a lot on your IGTV stories and your, these kind of campaigns. I mean, everybody nowadays is making a, be happy, stay positive, begin again campaign, and these kind of things. So e-commerce may not be the just, as I said, for shoppers to go and buy products, but then again, when you talk about luxury consumers, if you talk about the millennials, that's going to continue happening. Obviously, they're going to continue buying it. In fact, the day Amazon started again, Amazon, just giving you an example, of course, not about luxury products, but everybody around me, like I think was shopping, sitting with me, like around me, we were doing video calls and people were just like, okay, I need to buy this. So of course, like, that's going to happen. But when you look at like maybe jewelry and products like this, people are going to browse. And maybe eventually they're going to shop, and of course they're only going to shop from brands that they felt a connect with during this period.
It's a more research based purchase, right? In terms, you're not going to just it's impulse. Okay, I'm going to delve into the digitization topic here. Rizwan, this is for you. What does the future of luxury blogging look like? Because you've been very much involved in the process, and how are brands pivoting towards the whole digitization of events, launches, shows? Because you've been going for many of them prior to the COVID-19 attack.
Correct. So I think talking about the future, the immediate future, like Smita again mentioned, depending on the category of the brand, the short-term future is definitely digital, because travel has been cut down, right? So if I was traveling for a car launch 2 months back, that's not happening anymore. So we are doing launches digitally. So especially for a category like automobiles or watches, or for that matter, luxury sneakers, we've been seeing people have started selling. Adidas, for example, they've had like 6 different drops come last week, and they've all sold out. So again, Smita mentioned an interesting point, right? The millennials are buying.
Right. Is he muted or is something? Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you went off for a second there. We can hear you. We can hear you.
You can hear me, right? So it again purely depends on who the buyer is. But and talking about these digital launches recently, like I mentioned earlier, BMW has already launched 2 cars. They're launching one more day after. Lamborghini did an interesting launch where they had an augmented reality sort of aspect to it, where you could just like sort of zoom in the car into your room or wherever you are, and you can actually get to see the car right in front of you.
Right.
So brands are trying their best to give you that experience, at least in terms of
are they seeing any positive results from the same, or what do you think about that?
So sales are happening. So again, with luxury, again, automobiles, I feel after all this is over, people who can afford will start investing in personal vehicles, right? So for that category, sales will shoot up initially, which would either be a case of revenge buying or something which you never thought of earlier, that, I could maybe travel via public transport or Uber and Ola. But now people might want to invest in something which is personal.
Right.
So that category, definitely yes. Again, watches and wonders. Most of the watches were pre-booked and sold out even before the trade show happened. So that was more of a display rather than a sales event. But again, we heard that none of the watches are actually available because they're already pre-booked. So I feel the trend will obviously continue in terms of starting digital and then obviously giving you a personal experience as things sort of ease out.
Right.
But fashion is one thing which I'm confused about, because that is something I would like to go and try out if I don't know the brand or the fit. But again, I don't know how will the stores manage, because you try out something once and then you might have to sanitize that garment. So
I think most of the brands are following. I think to delve on that, brands are following like a 24-hour timeline where once if a client tries on the garment, it goes and gets disinfected for 24 hours in a separate section, and then can only be put on. Like that's the minimum a brand should do. So I think a lot of the luxury brands are planning on doing that. Akshay, let's go to you. So I mean, your take on the digitalization of fashion weeks, because at least for the next couple of seasons, how will styling become more virtual rather than physical post the pandemic?
So I think it's fascinating, like the whole process that you're talking about with the whole sanitization process that has to go into place. What I've noticed recently is that a lot of brands have actually started doing virtual reality trying clothes, and I think it's epic to watch. Just to see that you can just pose and the garment is in the same shape and sensibility that you would have, and you can buy that garment. So because it's like this weird Insta life or digital life that we're living now, right? Like, so to speak, beyond now for the first time. So I think a lot of people from the comforts of their home are able to actually get this look and get the thing. As a stylist, I mean, for us, it's always been an external viewing job. It's not that something that we do by hand. Specifically, there might be like little things that we finesse here and there, which I think to sort of dictate, understand the process a bit. We've learned to adapt to so many processes. You can hear me loud, everybody? Apparently my volume is loud.
So, a little louder.
Yeah. So basically, the thing is that I can look here virtually and I can tell you like, hey, your collar needs to be fixed, or hey, there's a crease here, and that kind of description. And I think stylists should probably invest in linguistic skills and communication. Because sometimes you're just not able to communicate that, and we're so used to being in a team environment of understanding with photographers, models, and communication and everything, that you have to be really hands-on, but in a hands-off way. It's really weird.
Right.
So I think that's the thing that is very prevalent anyway. And I mean, digital technology is just amazing. I find for everyone to just sort of adapt to learn how easy it is to just get on a camera to shoot a story editorially like that. You can understand what you need to tuck or what you need to do. You might be able to even get the sample of the product, let's say for yourself, figure out how it looks, because we're so used to that process of looking at ourselves in a mirror before we go out. So that's also the same thing. So whether now this mirror is now you or this digital mirror that we got in front of us. So I think it's definitely interesting times, and I think it's learn to be adaptive, learn to be communicative, learn to be clear. That's one thing for sure. I mean,
okay. So Parthip, again, on the digitization aspect, how do wedding vendors and designers adapt to the whole digitization of weddings? I know you're saying that I'm not too sure about the future of digital weddings, but the big fat Indian wedding is kind of turning into the small virtual Indian wedding, right? So you're seeing people that are being creative with the setups, with digital destination weddings, with pre-planned set menus for guests via delivery services. People are doing all that stuff, right? So what's your take on the digitization of the entire ceremony?
I think post-lockdown, the biggest luxury is going to be human interaction. We're going to you're going to look forward to attending a wedding where you can interact with people. You're going to be spending your entire work day. There was a time when we were doing meetings at work. We were stepping out maybe to grab a coffee or just shop during the lunch hour. The entire world of ours is going to be on the digital platform, right? We are going to have less face-to-face meetings. And whenever you're invited, either if you're a senior person, senior member of the family, you're invited for the fairas, invited for one of those, smaller cocktail parties. What you're going to look forward to is the interaction with people, meeting your friends and making new friends.
Right.
And in a scenario like this, I do know there are a lot of planners who are just looking at how do you use technology. But again and again, I'm saying the same thing. It is not like the fun is not going to be there if you're invited for a virtual wedding and through a certain network you get sent the food. The fun is really eating with people. It is not like what you would order. You can anyway order that same food. What makes the wedding experience different is that you have if not 20 different types of menus, you have 5 different types of menus, and you are meeting people, you're watching what people are wearing, and it will come back to the same thing, but in a much much more intimate setup. And as I mentioned earlier, if your really close friend or relative is getting married, then you will be watching it virtually.
Nice. Okay. Rasika, I'm just going to go back to you. So, I'm going to talk about, again, the digital aspect, but most of the brands, whether it's homegrown or even luxury brands in India, their marketing budgets have been slashed. They've been slashed from like 20 to 80%, depending on the brand. But digitization has been the go-to strategy for marketing spends, right? Because it supports, not only supports your e-commerce, but it's easier to track ROI. What do you think brands can do to adapt further to this?
So to answer your question, and also to take off from the previous question, which I feel I can add a little bit of what I feel there is, in the multi-designer space, we were perhaps amongst the first stores in the country to go on e-commerce, which we were globally delivering, and this was in 2016. When I think the market was not even open to luxury e-commerce in the space of multi-designer, designer clothes. What I learned from there to share with you all today is also that if you're working on retail margins, not producers' margins, then being on e-commerce is a game by itself of volumes. Otherwise, you cannot really make much in the bottom line. You can get a top line, no doubt, but what cost is it going to be at is something that every e-commerce player needs to ask themselves if they're going to be able to sustain themselves on it. What I mean is, the digital store eventually then becomes more like an experiential store online if you're talking of e-commerce and luxury. And when you're selling clothes or Indian fashion to someone sitting in their homes, it will pique their interest. There are 2 types of clients. I've seen a client who is not confident of walking into a store by herself, and who doesn't want to see or interact with people. Either they're very native speaking but have the money and still want to shop. They're very comfortable shopping online. That's one client that the communication needs to be talking to on e-commerce to give an insight. Secondly, also, when you're saying budgets being slashed and digitization becoming a trend and things like that, we need to understand that it's also 360 degrees. It can't be just viewed as e-commerce. So, for example, we wound up our e-commerce store in 2018, late 2018. And why? Because I didn't see the bottom line there. I'll be very blunt about it. Today you see stores stores which are multi-designer online going on 60% sale, where are the margins that they are selling from? I mean, how are they making money on e-commerce?
Right.
The question I would like to leave it to people to observe and answer for themselves. So while e-commerce seems like a great proposition and the space to be in, and fashion always follows a herd mentality at times, where, you know, the most happening thing is digital. So chalo abhi ye bhi karna hai. How can I not be on digital? I need to go with the flow. And that happens. But business asks and demands to stop for a minute, pause, understand fundamentals of business in bottom line, top line, categories. Can you show, say, 2,000 units online to a client who's used to shopping on Amazon and where have you? Or are you going to sell only 20 units online? Then how are you going to sell those 20 units? You know, there needs to be a whole thinking through to happen for someone to get onto e-commerce, rather than invest on it. Their cost related to server space, digital SEO, marketing, everything. It's a whole machinery by itself. It's running a store. It's not just a digital presence.
Definitely.
And again, you know, to answer, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little longer.
No, it's fine, please.
To answer your question on digitization and trends, like I said earlier, it needs to be 360 degrees marketing. It needs to be omni-channel, not a single channel. So you can't have an e-commerce store and rest on it expecting consumers to land on your page. You need to be talking to them via social media, which means therefore the ones who are already on e-commerce stores will want to work with those on the social media space where their brand aligns to the ethos of what that blogger or that influencer or that person is saying, to approach
content,
their universe and convert their universe to being your client. So that's one way that a brand can pivot their marketing through to gain any ROI at all. And even WhatsApp marketing or email marketing. I mean, these are very traditional sort of mediums of
which actually work.
But they work because
exactly.
You know what? That client has left the email ID for you to approach them on. And if you're directly reaching their inbox to say, hey, I understand this, what's happening, but can I help you? What are you looking for? And that's where the client will want to pick up the phone and connect to that stylist sitting, whether in the store or wherever, to get into a one-on-one selling, which is what also luxury is about again.
The experience.
So too many thoughts thrown there, but yeah, I mean, I hope I've answered your question.
You have. So delving a little on the social media and content creation. So
one more thing, Sandeep, if I may, sorry, one more thought. You know, I feel it's not just about e-commerce. I mean, Instagram is allowing people to shop on Insta. And for smaller businesses and smaller designers, it may be more viable
to try that out,
to get volumes there rather than try to be in that whole thing of I can only sell 5 units of this.
So as you was talking about Instagram, we're talking about content creation as well. Kresha, you've been known for your like individualistic aesthetic, right, and visual content. How do you deal with creating content during a lockdown like this?
So content creation for me personally has never been a problem unless I'm not in a creative zone. And it's my need to constantly do something that kind of, I think, you know, got me in this direction of photography and content creation. I think sometimes when we're put in, you know, a very challenging situation, amazing things come out of it. So I really use this time to be as creative as I can. I'm living with my parents right now, so I've used my sister as my model. She's not been happy about that at all.
I saw that.
But I've used Karina as my model. I mean, I've used myself as a model. I've, you know, put my phone down, videoed myself, styling a belt. Try to be really creative in using illustrations or using things that, you know, we can use in order to get the message across. We've done like really cool illustrations of like, you know, our Care for Karigar belt and how to style that. So I think as long as you kind of have your aesthetic in place, you know exactly what you want your content to evoke and the emotion you want to, get through it. You can figure it. Yeah.
Especially from a visual perspective, right? Because you are everything about what you do is so visual. So I think that's a great insight.
Yeah, I mean, I built a set at home right now, and because I needed to photograph, pieces from my new collection, which I launched just before this, Acropora.
Yeah.
And I really want to put it up on social media, and I really want to put it out there because a lot of people are asking for the collection. And so I've actually turned an entire room of mine into a set. It's taken 2.5 weeks to do by hand.
Like a mini underwater set.
I mean, you'll see, I'm really excited to launch it, but I don't think I ever would have been able to do this if not for this time and if not for these challenges. And again, it makes you think, do you really need like a big setup? Do you need a studio? Do you need to hire 20 people? Or can you just accommodate those needs yourself? So yeah, I think it's very big for me.
I think one more really important thing that on shoots, I think Akshay, you'll understand what I'm talking about here, is that if you look at a shoot that's done internationally and a shoot that's done in India, there are always threefold the amount of people that are there required on the shoot, right? So I think that's an issue that we've got to tackle sooner or later. Rizwan, what about you in terms of content creation, especially from a luxury perspective? How are you handling it from a work from home scene?
Yeah, so like Kresha mentioned, right? So it's been all about experimenting with different ways of creating content. So I have tried to go out of my comfort zone and create videos. This is something which is always on my mind, but considering our busy lives, I never got the time to spend time at home, and maybe talk about a product, or how to style something my way, or talk about my collection of sneakers, or how do I sort of decide on what tie am I wearing on a certain day. So luckily now, given that Saturday, Sundays, are free, relatively free, I'm experimenting with a lot of content, video content, to be frank, and yeah, I think it's been good. I've sort of when I jumped out of my comfort zone, I realized that people are actually liking that fresh set of ideas which are coming from my side. And again, like I said, social media right now is at its peak because engagement is at its maximum. Everyone is sort of spending time on the screen, so it's a good time to actually create content with whatever luxury you have at home, and talk about things you sort of expert. You are a subject matter expert on.
Right. Okay, Akshay. Like in terms of what I was talking about earlier about less interactions and less people being involved, especially post COVID-19, travel has been like a big part of your work, right? So, what are the changing prospects of fashion styling with regards to restriction in travel?
I mean, see, I don't work editorially, so for me, it doesn't affect me that much. But when we work on film locations and stuff, or any big production movies, we have big crews that are traveling and so on and so forth. But I think people will have to just adapt. Like, I mean, there's actually a lot of beauty in our country. I mean, there's that whole need of wanting to go and like get blue water here, and then whatever it is. I think it's a really great time to be like sort of going inward in the like sort of your inner self, but also in the community self. Like I think it's important to find out like why is Lakshadweep off record? Like why can't you go there? Like what are the reasons? What are the roadblocks? Why about Kerala? What about Ladakh? What about so on and so forth? There's so many places that that we just choose to not do because I guess it's the comfort of knowing sort of like known devils, so to speak, or just assumptions of certain things. But I feel like for me directly, it doesn't really bug me. I mean, I'm glad that at least now, somehow I managed to relocate myself from Bombay actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where are you based right now?
I have actually just been in Goa for the last week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I was just like, the city life just didn't agree to me anymore. Like it just didn't make sense. And I was sitting there and like wondering, like, can I do this from afar? So I went through the protocols of the professional courtesy to all the projects and all, letting them know that like, hey, I'm going to be operating out of that. My team is there. That's fine. Like I've done this for 9 years. I've got to trust my team a lot more.
Right.
You learn to let go of the micromanaging. You have to let go of like overworking. These are all the diseases, you thought you like were picking up because of this craziness of like non-stop. And I was just like, it's really okay. Like at this point, it's about adapting. It's about finding new ways, about finding new energies. Everyone's coming up with a lot more internalized sort of approach to things.
Right.
I mean, here we are talking about luxury in the comfort of all of our homes, and this alone is luxury, right? Like people are tuning in and watching us, and it's about how you think about it, right? Like, I mean, I love the fact that Kresha said that over the last 2.5 weeks, she's been putting a set together. Like, she has the space. Let's do it. Like, be smart about what you have in terms of your resources.
Right.
And Rizwan's content, I mean, I know for a fact that I've been like, I follow him and see how he does. Like, he's got all this quirky new approach. He's like what's going to happen? Like, so weddings are turning into more intimate affairs and one-off, like, and sustainable living, which I love the point that Rasika pointed out about that it's not just about the technique of this garment. It's about a lifestyle. It's about like, are you sustainable for yourself? Like, it's like following those practices.
Right.
And it's great, like, to know that, to a young minds to like be aware of the fact that this is the time to innovate. Like, creative people don't stop. I mean, here we all are. It's not like we put ourselves like in a situation. We've figured out how to put a group of people together that makes sense. We figured out how to have conversations that matter. We're forced to look inward. We're questioning ourselves. We're not just sort of going with the flow and blindly like following some manifest that's been given to us to follow.
Right.
Hey, like, I want to break the rules. What does that happen? Hey, I don't want to break the rules. And how can I break the rules? How should I not break this rule? Should I break that rule?
Right.
So I think the same way, shoots and like locations and travel will adapt. I mean, right now, unfortunately or fortunately, the travel situation in the country is a bit of a mess. Like, everyone's scared. It's not that hygiene was like, of utmost importance anyway to from the get-go. Now at least you're aware of it. So,
right.
I mean, I get this with a lot of flack, but like sometimes I'm like a little more like, okay, like this time has been actually necessary. Like, it's not a negative process entirely. Like, I mean, it is
from an introspection.
It's like release, obviously, and not to like dismiss the severity of it, but at the same time, like those who have been fortunate and those who have the luxury, so to speak, of privilege, like, you got to exercise that and do your bit. Like, support your own country, support your own neighborhood, support your local businesses, support local talent. Like, why does it have to be that the outfit or whatever is coming from Italy or Paris? Why should it not come from Bombay? Everyone comes here for the embroideries. Like
right. Yeah.
So I think like it's time to like, move in.
Domestic. So Smita, sorry, anything else?
That's it.
Smita, now again talking about the travel industry and hospitality, right? They've been severely affected. How are related brands adapting to this issue?
When you look at, I mean, obviously right now, no one is wanting to go anywhere, I think, for the next 1 year or so. But when you talk about travel, corporate travel is obviously expected to take, like to take it to be slow. But when you talk about leisure travel, I mean, from what I've spoken around, and I've spoken to a lot of my friends who are in the travel industry, they actually expect leisure travel to bounce back by the end of the year.
Right. I mean, that's pretty soon.
Expecting domestic leisure travel to be the next big thing, and people are going to want to go get into places, maybe travel even by car. So when when you look at hospitality brands, the ones who are coming forward and talking about their safety measures, their sanitization measures, and things like that are the ones who are going to be leading the way. You're not going to want to now, I think, again, you're not going to want to just trust those reviews on booking.com or makemytrip.com and blindly book. You're going to want to check with someone who knows someone at that particular property, or maybe even call up the property and book by yourself. You're not going to just maybe book on Make My Trip. You're going to first want to check, or even maybe do a Zoom call with the hotel people to check, especially if you're booking a 7-star or a 5-star property. You're going to want to take advantage of whatever technology you have before you trust them with your family, or even if you're going for a solo trip, or and things like that. But a lot of people are actually telling me from the hospitality industry that people are actually inquiring and checking, because a lot of these hospitality places, these hotels have been giving their spaces for COVID patients.
Right.
Like,
so it's been transforming, right?
Coming from the United States, or coming from into like basically Europe, US, wherever, and if they have the money, they'd rather put them up in a hotel for during the quarantine period. And because obviously hospitals right now are booked, I mean, there's no place. So a
Right.
lot of my friends and relatives who came from US, and they landed in Delhi, instead of going into a hospital, they had to check into a hotel and stay there for 14 days. And obviously they were given the options, that these are the options, these are the rates, this is the amount of money you pay, these are the measures, XYZ. You have to be locked in a room. It's not like a leisure, like a vacation or anything like that. But in a way, these hotels are also going to be you're gonna remember that they were there. They stood by, they supported. Like, I'm talking from a brand awareness perspective.
Right.
And I want to make a similar point here with respect to the fashion industry, even though the question that you asked me was related to the hospitality industry.
Right.
A lot of these fashion industries, fashion brands that are now making masks, or doing these kind of things, making protection gear for the doctors, for the nurses. After the lockdown, after the situation comes back to normal, you're gonna want to connect with these brands. You're gonna want to go and buy products from these brands, even if they are local homegrown brands. I'm seeing a lot of local homegrown brands. For that matter, Kurtis is one, if I can name the brand, and they've been making these masks out of leftover, out of old kurtis.
Right.
So it's very interesting that that kind of stays in your mind.
Right.
You don't forget it. So similarly, even with the hospitality brands right now, people are not open to travel anywhere. But if and when they do, it's these industries and these brands that have stuck with us during this period, that are going to be remembered, and that are going to be trusted. And again, for brands that are all your hospitality brands, hotel brands that are there on Make My Trip or whatever, you will see a lot of them actually, like JW Marriott for that matter is great, because they have their own app, which is amazing. You can do everything from the app. Not a lot of these hotel brands have that, but you're gonna see that happening very soon. A lot of these brands are gonna have their own digital app, or something like that you can use, and you don't need to
Right.
get information from there itself.
Okay. So Parthip, what do you think people are still going to consider destination weddings?
I have a point. I'm very curious to know, Sandeep, while all these hotels are coming out with detailed things on whatever they are doing for safety and hygiene norms.
Right.
I am just, I won't say with all the efforts they are doing, I'm just a little worried whether that's going to really appeal to the Indian family when it comes to celebrations. They're like, hey, you know what? Wait a minute. Am I coming into a hospital or a hotel? And my thing is that I don't know right now. So one way is they may feel much more secure in any hotel, so that is where it could be an opportunity for a business hotel now to be a social hotel also, because your don't matter. It's really what is your core, which is your sleeping. I have a feeling that a lot of families may gravitate towards the farmhouses in Lonavala, Karjat, Alibag, because they just might feel that these spaces have the flexibility which you may not have in, if I can use the term, in the 5-star hotels, because 5-star hotels have such a responsibility. You can just imagine one case and it's front page news. So they are doing all the efforts, but again, we have to wait and watch to see if the demand will be there, okay, for social celebrations. And the more the measures, I am not sure whether that is going to make the consumer feel more connected with the brand.
Right.
That's one feedback. Everything, we saw some images, moment, the airports became functional. And when we saw all those images, many of our friends posted on close Facebook groups, or they posted stuff, and we looked at it and said, hey, bro, if a friend of mine traveled and he said, okay, and he would just message saying, hey, bro, I had to travel, but please don't travel unless there's an emergency. Right. The moment our friends or influencers like Rizwan, Kresha travel to a place, I am not sure whether they would again like to go to an isolated place like Maldives after this long period of isolation. So again, I'm very curious to know where if Kresha and Rizwan will go off to a Maldives, Mauritius, or Phuket, or whether they would go to a Singapore and Dubai, or Dubai to where there's a nightlife, and maybe they share a picture from a lounge where there are people around. So whatever our friends, influencers, or others post on their travels and places they are going to, and that is going to get us back to think about travel again. And as we've been writing on WeddingSutra, it's all about family. It's all about those baby steps. You think about your home, then you look at the banquet hall or the clubhouse in your neighborhood. Right. Then you look at the 5-star hotel closest to you. You look at Alibag. So it's again that whole evolution which will start again, and then maybe in a year's time, families would look at maybe much longer at a destination wedding in India, and then.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about the last topic. I think I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to try and keep this as concise as possible. So post-pandemic innovation, right? So Kresha, in terms of the luxury business, luxury and discounting don't go hand in hand at all, right? So how do you combat inventory issues and dead stock for your label?
Okay, this is a very long answer. I'm going to try cut it down. Okay, so discount and sale are two words that are absolutely not in our brand.
Correct.
Vocabulary, of course, we can do anything to accommodate a client's budget by creating special pieces for them within their comfort range. But reductions and discounts really aren't possible when there is that level of intricacy and craftsmanship within the pieces.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to answer both the questions with at the same time. So when we're talking about discounts and when we're talking about dead stock, for our brand in particular, our pieces take a really long time to create, right? A lehenga can take anywhere between 3 months to 6 months.
Correct.
A love story lehenga can take as much as 11 months to create. And apart from this, each piece is really created with utmost care, velvet gloves, if you must say. Every piece has a story, every piece has a name. It's almost like a birth of a child, And apart from that, we don't aimlessly create. And this is something that has, come out of this pandemic as well, where a lot of fashion brands, Gucci mentioned that it was just going to create 2 collections a year. And I think it's amazing to not create like a machine, fall, spring, summer, cruise.
Because I think that goes into the fast fashion category, and you're kind of competing with the wrong sector, in my opinion, because that's the mentality of fast fashion, right? They've just started increasing collections year on year. You're seeing more capsules come out, you're seeing more collections come out. So I think that's a very fair point, actually.
And I also feel it goes, it's opposite to what luxury is supposed to be. Luxury is classic. It's meant to be an investment piece. When you're looking at, spending thousands and thousands or lakhs on a bag, and then worried that 3 months later, oh, this is going to go out of fashion because a new collection is in, that's kind of crazy. So we've, always focused on maybe creating 1 collection a year, or at max 2 collections a year. And we've also got a lot of flack for it, because clients are like, oh, when is the new collection out? When is the new collection out? But when you aim on creating classic pieces, timeless pieces, it doesn't matter how many collections you remove in a year. When I have someone look at a lehenga they purchased 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it still needs to be relevant today. So many times, like for my new Acropora collection, I actually launched 3 pieces that I had designed in 2014.
Nice.
So I think that's really important, and we only create 1 piece per design.
Right.
and we really focus on customization. I know a lot of luxury brands. Sorry.
So inventory is not a massive issue for you, which is great.
So inventory luckily has never really been an issue.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and I'm going to go straight to Akshay here because we're talking about the future of innovation also. So what does the future of freelancing look like to you? Many brands are talking about how they're going to switch to contractual based freelancers for projects. And like in terms of that, can you delve a little more about that? What do you think about that?
Firstly, I mean, I think that the whole aspect of freelancing is going to change. Obviously, it's going to have to be contracted. I think there's a bit of a problem in the country anyway with the operational standard of freelance. It's just, you have no contracts. You just have these conversations via WhatsApp and you just go on the job because everyone's just itching to do it so fast.
Right.
Like in the same light that Kresha is saying that how things are reducing, luxury means something else. At the end of the day, you're offering a service to somebody and it takes a certain number of days. It's like, there's no need to like run this rat race and be crazy about it. So I think what's really important is to make sure that we find a set of vendors essentially, that you create a system that you work with regularly so that control is there and then you are a controlled freelancer, so to speak, a contracted freelancer as you're suggesting, right? I think it makes a lot more sense to control like this dynamic so that you know who is in and out and what is working, and you have to just be a little more picky and choosy about what you work with and be mindful. So I think,
Awesome. Okay, I have a lot more to go through, but I'm going to cut it short here because I want to answer the Q&As that have come in. There's quite a few questions that have come in for all of you guys. I'm going to maybe take on 3 or 4 questions before we end this this session. So let's start off with the Q&As. The first one is for Rasika. Rasika, a lot of luxury brands are not online. How will they handle the sales during this period, as other fast fashion brands are online and people can shop without going online?
So I'm assuming that there is a retail presence, at least that whoever is selling from.
Right.
If not an e-commerce or digital presence.
Right.
Like I had said earlier, direct marketing is one of the key drivers of sales in a time when physically a client is not able to come. You go to the client in the inbox, whether on WhatsApp or on, say, a direct messaging, even on Instagram stories, DMs.
Right.
We do see sale happening there, where a client inboxes and says, is this available? Can I buy it? And then the sale transaction occurs, through a inbox connect. So there are multiple ways of selling, even if the brand is not digitally on an e-commerce platform, let's say. Another way to sell is to sell to someone who is on e-commerce. So if a designer approaches a web store, which is an aggregator, and you do a B2B connect, then a B2C connect. And that could be one way of selling when one doesn't have an e-commerce presence of their own. I think, it's also critical to know, to gather data.
Right.
Who is your client?
Right.
Where are they shopping? If you've been able to collect data ongoing over the years of business existence, then it's still easier to sift through it and understand who have been your top clients and invest. So at times what happens is 20% of your clientele gives you 80% of the business.
Right.
And it makes logical sense to focus on those 20% in a more customized PR to ensure that business is not affected. However, of course, these are unreal or abnormal times, and business is going to be affected. So if one had, say, anywhere between 10 to 50 footfalls in a day, that's not happened. And everyone's affected, so the fate of everyone's going to be similar. I mean, everyone's in the same boat. So it's not that someone else is selling and therefore, and you're not selling and therefore you're panicking. So I think we need to forget that panic to some extent. We're in it together.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so Smita, I think a lot of questions have come for you, and I'm guessing many of these are from your students because they're very, very interested in the placement side of luxury. So I'm going to club like 3 or 4 questions together because they've all talked about placement, but they think, what will the future of international luxury placement look like with designers as luxury brands, primarily in India? And another person has also asked, what will be the influence of COVID-19 on job opportunities in the luxury domain? So it's basically the same thing. So you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm just going to talk from my own experience, what I've been, facing since the lockdown. Surprisingly enough, the lockdown has been one of the most active periods for us, where we've seen a lot of brands, a lot of industry experts, insiders come forward, and they've wanted to interact with our students. They wanted to shell out projects for students to work on. They wanted to experiment with different kinds of small capsule projects, research projects, marketing projects. To be very honest, yes, it does look like hiring is going to be on an all-time low. Brands are not going to want to hire fresh fresh candidates, maybe for a couple of months. But having said that, one should not just think about what's going to happen in the next 2-3 months. You have all of this a year and most of next year to see how things play out. And from what I've understood, again, talking from my inner circle that I've been discussing with a lot of HR people who are involved in hiring of luxury brands within this market. They have all been talking about how they are looking at hiring fresh candidates, because obviously when they are so many employees are being laid off in one way. But again, that also shows that they are looking at maybe hiring younger, fresh. So when you talk about students of your young professionals, it's not looking that bad. It may take a while, it may be slow, but if you have the right skill set, and mainly if you've shown that you've been able to adapt during this pandemic, you've been able to work with the new technologies, work with the pandemic, work from home, deliver from home, then there's no reason why. Like we've actually had 30 internships during this period. In the last 2 months, we've had 30 students who've been recruited on paid internships. So this has been the most amazing. I mean, it's been an eye opener for me, and it's been great to see that, and to see such a warm welcome from the industry and big brands. We've spoken to so many top HR of all these luxury brands in India, Burberry, Gucci, all of them. They all open, waiting. When the retail stores open, they want to interview fresh candidates.
Right. Nice.
So again, depends on the core skills of the person and how adaptive you are. That is what's going to get you the job. And to be honest, that's not changed much. That is what got you a job in the luxury sector even before, if you had an edge over other people.
So it's not as negative as people are thinking it's going to be.
Absolutely not. I think for young professionals, it looks good, in fact, because brands are looking at hiring younger candidates who are better with technology, who are better with who are able to adapt in this current situation, because you don't expect someone who's 50 years old to be able to adapt to this. Their routine and their way of working is very different. Whereas if you compare that with someone right now, all school kids are giving exams online. All your 10th, 12 standards students, even the ones who are doing the graduation, bachelors, etc., they all studying and giving tests and exams online. They're having classes online.
So, can I add to that just this thought only, if you don't mind?
Sure.
The only thing is that the best part about this, which I kept suggesting to my team as well, is that use this time to make sure you are the most skilled in your department, so that when it's open, that you are ready. Don't sit there waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. So spend the time. You can figure that out. I think that's the only thing that's going to give you an edge above the rest.
I want to add one point to what Akshay said. Do use this time? I've also seen a lot of brands during this period doing a lot of global trainings, which was not happening before. These luxury brands are actually doing trainings on Zoom, and a lot of global trainings where there are like some 300 people in the training, and a lot of people are getting that access to that kind of knowledge that was required in Indian retail luxury sector, because in the Indian retail luxury sector that particular kind of skill and knowledge was not being passed on. But right now, like I'm talking to every week they have trainings, and it's amazing. So I think again with students and young professionals who use these facilities, who use these technologies, for them getting a job post pandemic won't be difficult.
Great. So it's not, exactly. So it's some positivity in that, right?
It takes time, but it won't be like an impossible thing to do.
Right. Okay, so the next question is directed to me. What are your thoughts on the luxury brands and consumer goods using sanitization processes? How will a product like a bag or a shoe be sanitized, which gives a complete assurance of the safety factor? Brands can't edit or hold consumer goods for 24 hours between two trials, right? Okay, so I mean, and this is again talking from my brand perspective, but it depends on brand to brand again. But I would say most luxury brands definitely take more than 24 hours between trials. I take 45 days for each garment. So that's the issue right there, doesn't hold for me. And I think, I would say brands are at stake here. Their name is at stake here. So if there's anything that goes wrong, it's their onus. So we're obviously looking at people who are going to be extra careful and take more precautionary measures to ensure the same. I also feel, we are fortunate to have a big space, and as Kresha also said, Kresha can add to this as well. I have a big studio, and I only take one client per floor. I have 2 floors. So I cannot afford to have any walk-ins. It's purely by appointment only. And I want to maintain that exclusivity and that service to the client, because that's what they come back for. They're looking for that assurance and that safety from a trusted brand. I think this is a time where brands are not going to go to newer brands and explore. They're going to, as many people in this panel said, they're going to go to trusted people again and again to experience the luxury. So yeah, Kresha, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I also think it's really important for us as brands to be really organized.
Right.
A lot of this will happen virtually, and Sandeep and me both, we really work in like the bespoke space,
right,
more than the retail model of like coming and picking up a piece. So to be really organized, you will get a sense of what your customer wants before they're coming to the store. People are not coming for like frivolous browsing anymore. People will want to see the catalog online or on social media, narrow down their preferences, and I'm sure you as well, like we're just following the appointment system, so we will only be allowing people in that have appointments. So kind of figuring out what your clients want, and allocating their appointments accordingly. So maybe if you have a client that wants to try out the same lehenga or the same piece, separating them by, I would say as of now, a week minimum. I'm not sure if I'm wrong, but from whatever I've seen, I don't think there has been a study of how long the virus can last on cloth.
Right.
I have seen that on plastic, it lasts, I think, 7 days, and on glass, 4 to 5 days.
Correct, yeah.
And for us, because we use embellishment, which comprises both plastic and glass of beading sequence, I would say a week is an approximate time you would have to give between a client trying on the exact same piece. So organizing your kind of, appointments would be key.
But as I said, also luxury brands don't take 24 hours for like 2 trials and 3 trials, because that goes against the whole service and the whole quality of the garment in terms of the intricacies that it takes to make the garment as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I think if you have a piece in store, which
that's from an off the rack perspective, right?
Also, what your client wants to try, like maybe a jacket.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so
I think
Rizwan,
Sandeep, just to add to that, I think the challenge will be for the luxury retail brands, who are situated in malls, etc. Right? So for them, maybe it'll be interesting. How does that pan out?
Right. Of course. Yeah. And since you're speaking, someone's directed a question to you as well. So do you think this experience will permanently alter the way you work as an influencer when the economy reopens?
So in fact, I feel the number of influencers as a whole will get filtered out, because now brands will be more focused on who they are dealing with. So someone who has added value to a brand will obviously get preference over someone who's new or someone who hasn't worked with them before. And again, since digital will be the way to go, influencers will spearhead a lot of initiatives in the near future. So like Parthip said, right, if travel opens up, influencers will be spearheading that particular initiative, and they will give a first-hand experience of how does it feel to travel again. So I might not trust, like Smita mentioned, a review which is on paper, but I would like to see a first-hand experience of someone who's actually traveled and what does it feel like. So like I said, the quality influences will thrive for sure, because digital will definitely pick up. And again, across categories, I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for fresh ideas also. If you can create something which is out of the box, it'll definitely get noticed, because screen time has increased. People are actually browsing everything possible online. So
awesome.
I don't see any problem if you're creating quality content.
Great. Okay, so
can I just add on to
please do. Please do. Please.
They both spoke about freshness, and I have been noticing in the wedding industry there is so much of an alarm that okay, if things move from 500 to 50, how will I make money?
Right.
Now, people need to start thinking, how can I be useful to the consumer? The consumer is not going to be worried about how much money you made in the past.
Right.
When you have new students who are coming, they bring into an organization. I'm not even talking of new influencers who may come in. They will all bring in what is called how can I be useful for a brand? How can I be more useful for the consumer? Because yes, there have been a lot of professionals and businesses which have made good money in the last 4 or 5 years. It could be their talent, or it's just they've been part of a wave. If they're going to be saying, you know what, earlier this is the kind of money I made, you have to stop thinking like that, because really there's this reset button. If you can be useful to your consumers, no matter what product or say, and that is where we need students of the SP Jain to working on a project, we are working in an organization, or with Kresha, or with Rizwan. How can I be more useful? And that is what you are needed.
I will just, send resumes right after this Zoom call.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to end this last question here. I'm going to keep it open-ended because this person has not requested a specific name, but it comes from Mr. Malo Le Mestre. Hi there. Thank you for this very interesting webinar. I have noticed that the HNWI prefer to remain anonymous when they buy luxury goods. Since shopping online usually requires data collection, what do you think could be a barrier for this profile of client to buy online? I'm afraid that most of them would reuse the registration and refuse the registration. How would you address this issue? Thank you very much. Anyone, Smith? Yeah, please.
So I will not disclose which brand I did this with, but I worked with a luxury brand over the last couple of weeks in the essence of shifting gears. Like we mentioned already, like a lot of luxury brands have the resources and capabilities to actually restructure their approaches quite extensively. So I know that for one example that I was onboarded as one of a personal shopper.
Okay.
Along with, so like for me, it was new in the sense that it was still styling, but at the same time, it was not giving the data away of the top client anyway, which is in the database. So they don't have to actually, the brand goes to the client. So this kind of level of intimacy, this kind of level of attention to detail, realizing, catering to something specifically to those people was integral to the approach. It couldn't have been something that was just blindly done in a one-off situation where I had been briefed also on the client, where I knew about the client, I had been shared with this NDA contract was done. So these kind of approaches are going to be, implemented. A lot of paper trail, I think, which anyway India lacks for.
Right.
Something that probably is going to have to kick in and be able to sort of work. Because if a client who has so much money and luxury especially, you cannot wait for them to come to you. You know, you have to make sure that you are the kind who finds them, guides them, holds them, keeps them safe, and contains that, you know, that process. So it's like you have to work with them. You have to get to know them. You have to genuinely like them and actually, you know, be on the same page as them. Like, they don't have the time. It's you are the misconception that is there, that, you know, people are just itching to come back to the streets and buy. They're still going to call that personal CA from the store and say, hey, you have helped me in the past. I need you to still do this. This is still the kind of cash amount I'm going to pay you. I'm not going to so on and so forth. And we all have faced this in our own ways, right? Like, when you deal with a really high-end client, like sometimes there is the bureaucratic aspect of you, whether it's legal, illegal, that's
for sure.
But that being said, you take a decision and it's a choice made by both parties to go ahead with certain things for the sake of the business. So I think this situation, given the distress, given the craziness, it's really important to remember that the roots of where luxury started, I think that's what's really important. Like Kresha was saying earlier as well, Rizwan has also mentioned this, that, you know, that luxury is not a service. Luxury is a lifestyle. So there's a big difference here for you to really be aware of when you're going into that aspect. Like, you have to be able to word things differently. You have to be able to present things differently. You have to make sure it's catered individually. It's not a like tried and tested. Like, if it takes 45 days, it takes 45 days. They understand that because they live that lifestyle. It's not, oh, why can't you do it in 3 days? You know, when I come to you, because unfortunately the timeline of our life.
I know.
Yeah. So you know, it has to be something to remember and be importantly sort of as a cornerstone going forward. That's why Gucci did, I think, what it did, because they were like, you know what, hey, we are doing what we're doing and it's great, but we are not going to no longer run the rat race. Like, we're not interested in catering to some random situation. If this watch is going to take 7 years to be made and come out, then people will wait 7 years for it. It's like investment pieces, right? These are not just use and dispose pieces. So I think that sort of, I hope, kind of answers the question.
It does. Rasika, I think you want to add to that?
Yeah, I had a simple solution for that. This is something which can be given to your technical teams as feedback, and they can give you a circumventing button to say that digitally this client doesn't want to register, and it's okay. We don't want to lose the sale. That's not what one does. One wants the sale. So give that option in case if the client doesn't wish to register, to still conclude the purchase.
Check out as a guest, basically.
Yes, at the checkout. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have honestly a ton of more questions, but I don't, like, we've already been doing this for more than an hour and a half, and I scheduled this for an hour. So I'm going to stop here. So what I can do for the people that have asked questions is, if they could email them to me on my email address, and me and my team will make sure that you get your answers from the specialist that you've asked it to. So guys, please respond on email later in the next couple of days with the answers. Okay, that wraps up our discussion for today. A big thank you to all our panelists for taking the time out and chatting with us. I am sure all you guys who tuned in are going to learn a lot, especially from Smita's students. It's been our mission to kind of connect people, creative people as well, and help them through these times. So we're going to do a lot more of these webinar sessions in the future, delving on different topics. So please stay tuned. Thank you guys for coming again and being a part of this discussion.
Thank you, Sandeep, for having us.
Thank you guys.
Great meeting all of you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye and best.